You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.
Welcome back to On the Way Home, the podcast where we explore the ideas, leaders, and innovations shaping housing and community across Canada. I'm your host, Emmy Kelly, and today I'm thrilled to welcome a guest whose leadership has been deeply influential in the GTA and beyond. Heather McDonald, President and CEO of the United Way Greater Toronto, joins us to talk about her first 6 months in the role, the organization's bold 10-year strategy, and the recently released Built for Good report that sparked important conversations about how we unlock more affordable housing across our region, from system barriers to practical solutions, sector collaboration, and what gives her hope for the next decade ahead. This conversation dives into what it really takes to build strong, equitable communities. Let's listen in. Hey, Heather, thank you so much for joining us on the way home today.
I am so glad to be here, Emmy. It's great to spend this time with you.
We're going to start off with our signature question. What does home mean to you, Heather?
You know, I've been in the field of building, purchasing, renovating, and creating homes for folks for my, most of my career. But when I hear that question, I think of my boys. I think of playing rummy, lying on the ground. I think of my dog running around us, then curling up by my legs. Like, honestly, it's about warmth and family for me. That's home.
Amazing. And congrats on your 6-month role so far at United Way. You stepped into the role of President and CEO of the United Way Greater Toronto earlier this year. What has your first almost year on the job looked like, and what have been some of the biggest learnings so far for you?
Well, it's been 6 months. So, it's been amazing. And Emmy, it's an incredible organization. I mean, I was the CEO of a great organization prior, Loft Community Services I was there for many years, 19 years. And I just thought this is an opportunity to have a new platform of partners and to kind of create bigger, bolder, scaled solutions in our region. So really excited to come here. And I knew the people were terrific because, I've worked with United Way and worked as an organization that had received funding from them and had been at things. And and you get here, and in fact, they are as great as I perceive them to be as someone from the outside. So I think what's really interesting about United Way that was different from where I was is that it is fundraising. Their mission is to make a difference and impact in our communities. And they do that through raising funds. And so that doesn't stop. We have to fundraise throughout the year for that money to get out to create solutions and to invest in our community agencies to deliver on these big impacts we want to have. So I've arrived, and the fundraising just must continue. So there's not a lot of time to okay, I'm going to take stock and what do I do here? It's like, let's go. So, and in a lot of ways that suits my personality. I'm like a high momentum, let learn by doing type of person. And it's intense. I think what I've really seen is United Way shows up to say people stay well, recover, thrive in communities. And there's a need to invest in community. And I think often donors don't know where to start around that. And United Way provides this great platform to say, hey, here are the issues that we're all caring about. And these are our solutions we are able to fund, galvanizing all these great communities, neighborhoods, partners, and agencies. So it's been great. It's been a lot of, we've just embarked on a 10-year strategic plan that involves new learning for the organization too. So the short answer, it's been very full. I've been delighted to see and experience the team that I had hoped for, hoped to have colleagues like the ones that I get to be with every day. But it's not just the colleagues. It's actually also the partners like you at Blue Door and other partners that are just terrific. You can pick up the phone and say, help me understand this, or what do you think we should do here? So there's just so many people willing to help in all sorts of different areas: labor, corporate partners, donors, community agencies, municipalities, and provincial and federal government. So it's been exciting, and I'm really jazzed by the potential.
And I feel like, am I correct when I feel like when you stepped into the role, you were like basically ready to roll out the 10-year strategy, correct?
Well, and some people wondered, is what's it like coming and you inherit a 10-year strategic plan instead of being part of developing it? And I actually came because of the plan. I was actually one of the partners asked for advice about said plan. So I came here excited about it. An organization is bigger than the CEO. So a strategic plan is bigger than the CEO. And I mean, what do? You have someone new come that sets the strategic plan. How long is that going to take? Our communities can't wait. So I came because of the strategic plan, and luckily have a lot of the folks on our board and in our organization that are continuing all the great work and helping me understand the things I need to learn. But I came here because I was excited about the strategic plan. But it is about operationalizing it, right? Okay, if all of our wildest dreams come true, what are we doing in 10 years? Okay, what sort of outcomes is that having? Is that matching with what we hope to achieve? And then what sort of changes are needed within the organization? Things we need to be able to do, people we need to be working with. So really starting to then understand what we need to do now to start building to reach that place in 10 years. So I have done that sort of work before, and so it's just getting in and starting. And it's been exciting to come and actually have a roadmap. That's helpful. So it's been exciting, and everyone's really mobilized behind the plan.
That's very cool. I love what you said about it actually like drawing you to the role. And the strategies focused on impact, growth, and operational transformation, as you said. What does this vision mean in practice for communities across the GTA, since, United Way is such a supporter of that work?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few things. One is that we understand and see, and as new to it, I really understand the privileged place United Way is as someone that convenes. We have a cluster tables or tables across our regions and geography where we're hearing from neighborhoods and community agencies. Oh my gosh, this is an emerging need. Who would have thought that Peel would be suddenly having to figure out how to serve so many asylum seekers recently? This is an emerging issue around climate and air quality resilience for folks. So we're very much on the ground and can hear those issues bubbling up and say, hey, we're hearing them. We're now going to galvanize a response to it. So one is we really want to double down on that galvanizing role, that convening role. And we've been asked by all of our partners, including our community agencies, do that with us. Because when we do that, we can leverage then our generous donors, our corporate partners, to then inspire them to give to those important things that are grounded in what we know. We're animating what our community agencies and neighborhoods are saying, and then we can bring that and get needed philanthropic support for those needs. So that moves to philanthropic giving, which is shifting and changing. And, United Way has had model around workplace campaigns and giving, which is hugely successful. And still, we have incredible amount of generous corporate donors and the individuals in that corporation doing so much to give to United Way. And we also need to think about what does the future of giving look like, looking at major donors, transformational donors, and other sources of revenue to be able to support what we do. So that's a big change for United Way, and we're well on our way, working with some incredible relationships and donors who are already giving at that level. And I've just been astounded by that generosity and commitment. And then we also have to then empower the engine to serve all this, which is about what do our structures need to change? How do our people's competencies and skills need to change and adapt? And then all at the same time, you have to be ready for the things that come at you. So, all right, we got to implement and really look at responsible AI in our organization. Here's a need. A new structure's been set up federally around housing. Like, how are we going to interact? So you got to always have to be ready for those things that come and happen and be ready to change course. But I had a great chat with Ed Clark, who's the former CEO of TD. Like, what a brilliant man. And he said, to plan is to choose. So start planning, start figuring out how you should be spending your time to have that desired impact. And hey, if we have to revisit, it's better than to say, okay, here's this new thing. How do we incorporate it with things prioritize these things and figure out where do we go from here? Rather, you need a plan to really be able to decide what's the best course. So that's really where I've been spending a lot of my energy with the teams.
Very cool. I wanted to touch on the new Built for Good report. Blue Door was actually very proud to endorse it at the very start. And at its core, and I'm hoping you'll share too for listeners who may not be familiar with the report, what problem was the Built for Good report trying to solve? What are the key recommendations you believe could actually move the needle in the next 12 to 24 months?
So our report, which I have here, they still have paper copies of these. So I just want to shout out that we did it in partnership with the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada. And of course, so many partners who gave great thoughts and feedback to it. I think really what we were highlighting is understanding the gap around deeply affordable housing and the needs around that. That, of course, would be something Blue Door would be very passionate about. So you may be serving people in shelters or in temporary shelter, and where are they going to go? And I think what this plan is really identified that we are at risk of losing a lot of deeply affordable housing if we don't look at investment to support them. We will have a gap of like 15,150 units in 2 years. Our plan and roadmap is we are suggesting they're shovel-ready projects. We can help identify those projects. It will require $16.7 billion investment. And people hear that and go, oh my golly, that's a lot of money. But it's really on par with what we're investing in, say, transportation infrastructure. We need to think about housing as required community infrastructure. So, and we also said we need 107 rent supports to help people stay housed, and that we need to ensure we're not losing 65,000 existing homes because we need investment in acquisition and repair. And so it's building, but also acquiring, preserving what we have. See, what we do if we're not thinking, because right now the economic situation is really difficult for developers. They can't develop, and when they do, they will really need to lean more on market rent to pay for what is a very challenging place we are in around financing builds. But we're saying we must have that government investment to ensure that we have those deeply affordable housing. And it really has been decades in the making, this crisis, because we were creating and building, the government was creating and building deeply affordable housing, and we just stopped. And we thought the private market could take it from there. And what we are now seeing is this real serious gap in that housing. The organization I used to work at Loft, we received keys to a 62 unit building that we've maintained and stewarded. They've maintained and stewarded for all these years as deeply affordable housing. Nonprofits are uniquely and uniquely positioned and mission driven to keep that deeply affordable. So we're highlighting the role of nonprofits to steward and this investment over time as a key player in creating those deeply affordable housing units.
And do you feel like, just while we're on that role of nonprofits that you touched on there, I'm interested if you have any perspective for organizations listening in. What do we need to do to prepare to be ready at the scale that's actually needed?
That's a really great point. And I was talking to some colleagues about that earlier today, because I can even speak from a former CEO of a large supportive housing provider where we owned a lot of real estate. There are a lot of things that need to happen to make it as easy as possible for folks to develop. So one is we don't necessarily have the in-house skills to do that. We just trained up and we learned and we had amazing volunteers, but it takes time and commitment and prioritizing to make that where you're going to spend your time. Also, not a lot of nonprofits have the reserves to leverage to create and build housing and to get the financing required. So I think there is a need to address that gap that supportive housing providers have to do that. And one of the ways to do it is, of course, leverage housing that we own, housing that we've owned that's been ministry supported, or in some cases, nonprofits have housing that other nonprofits have given to them because they're no longer able to manage it. So these can all be used as leverage to finance new projects. But sometimes there's lots of red tape and that holds that back because these are, in some of them, old pieces of paper and yellowed files in the ministry somewhere that, is actually that the ministry has right to first right to those sites should you default on the mortgage. So what that means is that you can't make another bank, for example, as easily, although we have done it, but it took a long time. So there's work around the ministries to work together and gather that understanding to help nonprofits leverage what they own. And also, I think a great opportunity is purchasing and funding purchasing of real estate. Again, easy to leverage or easier to leverage over time. United Way has supported that happening. And I think there is a role of philanthropy. There is a big role for philanthropy. I think a couple of things around donors with housing. Just if you had your your money to donate, you want to know the project's going to be successful. So donors are not likely, as a grant going to show up at a project that maybe might happen if all the things line up. They're going to want likely to be knowing that project is going to meet fruition. So then we're going to need some sort of lending or a benevolent lending kind of structures for nonprofits. But there is philanthropic interest to purchase. I think purchase is an area philanthropy would be interested. Preserving, we've philanthropists who are interested to see what the building condition assessment is. And they might say, wow, if I fund that roof, that means people maintain that housing. So it's a very tangible with impact investment philanthropy can have. So I see part of my role is supporting all the government roles and giving solutions to that on how to make it as easy as possible, but also figuring out how we leverage philanthropy to help make it happen. And finally, I do not think this is something nonprofits can do alone at scale. So how do we come together and do that? A couple of my colleagues have tried, and I think there's some renewed energy around how we pull together efforts, equity, and know-how to pull it off.
Agreed. And as you went into philanthropy, and this is completely off topic, but I remember in a presentation you did at ONFA, I love this little quote you said about it was a key for when you're making the ask. You said when you ask for dollars, you get advice. When you ask for advice, you get dollars. And so I just thought to throw that in for the listeners. I think it was a great key for leaders also who are trying to fundraise, because people want to be part of the solution, right? And so asking for that advice usually gets you the buy-in and the support you're looking for.
You got it. And I think what I meant by that too is when I think of when there's been success around philanthropy, you're opening your books and inviting a partner in. And many times these philanthropists know a lot about maybe housing, development, investment, asset management. So let them in, open the books. But you also have to be thoughtful around understanding the risk of the investment and being very upfront around that, or maybe, looking at our best to mitigate the risk. So I can think of showing a philanthropist, here's our building condition assessment. Here's proof we own the building. Here's the building condition assessment. If I were you, these are probably the 5 questions I'd have. Here are the answers. Is there anything I'm missing? Like, you really need to open it up. Come see the site yourself. Tell me what you think. And it is through that partnership that people feel more informed and invested in the outcome.
So back to the report that we were talking about, the Built for Good report. It does highlight several system barriers, financing, zoning, labor capacity, and speed. Which of these, in your opinion, is the most urgent to fix? And what practical steps do you feel governments and communities should prioritize right now?
Yeah, well, I think there's the fact is, we're not going to build ourselves out of the problem we have right now. Like, we have urgent need now. So I would think it's kind of two-pronged. One is there's an opportunity to see the role of nonprofits as stewards and owners of real estate moving forward. Help maintain what you've got and help purchase things at risk of being lost. I think that's a hugely important strategy to invest in now. At the same time, there's this building we can't not build. We need to build new housing. So you need that at the same time. And I think there's opportunities to put the building blocks, foundation blocks in place to make that possible. So that's about what kind of structures are available, again, to look at equity across nonprofits, to look at how to provide the skills and experience to engage boards in this work, and structures on how to present our business, make sure that it's a good business case with sound financial analysis around builds, because they can be, without that really thoughtful structure in place, unfortunately, there can be a lot of time spent on drawings or dreaming, but then, when the rubber hits the road, it's not able to move forward. And then at the same time is always thinking about, how am I going to fund this? So we have at United Way funded some housing projects that are, here's all of our Lego pieces. This is the one missing. And this is how we're going to get it later. And so they have a plan, and it was very compelling, very organized. That's the sort of thing that all nonprofits wanting to do this need to have, that structure. Is that a role for UNFA? Is that a role for other sort of groups like that? I think it's really important that we start pulling together efforts.
And so maybe that segues well into asking you, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for community organizations and nonprofits to help bring this report's recommendations to life?
I think we need to highlight this as an issue. And I think really it's about getting educated and informed. There's lots of opportunities. I mean, it seems like there's lots of panels and discussions to start learning, start engaging boards if this is an ambition you have. And it is, I feel, an imperative that you're looking at the assets you have. So that may be people. That may be volunteers on your board. They may be donors and volunteers. It may be real estate you own, equity you have, and municipal relationships that you have. I think it's our responsibility to say, take stock of what you have, and we really must use it. So if an organization has the equity, and maybe properties that can be redeveloped, just look at what strengths do I have, do that audit, and then figure out, is this an ambition that our organization has? And if it is, start getting that governance and bring in organizations that have done builds successfully in to learn how we're going to do this. And if it's not, it may not have to be your organization or the organization. Could be another organization. Could say, hey, we'll give you some of our equity we have, or leverage this. And then maybe that means you can build and we can use some of those units, or we can be part owner of that new structure that you build. Or, there's different things that I think we need to think out of the box, and it will be more and more how we're going to do that together as across organizations. So I think as first, is it your ambition? I think it's our imperative. If you've got some building blocks that are positioning yourself that you could even have it as an ambition, we have to do it. We just have to. And then it's thinking about, okay, where do we want to get and when? What do we need to start to build to get there? And that's some of those things I've just described.
And you started getting into it a little bit before, but prior to joining United Way of Greater Toronto, you led Loft Community Services through major growth, acquisitions, and significant expansion of the housing portfolio at that organization. How do you feel that experience shaped the way you're approaching leadership at United Way Greater Toronto now?
Well, it is really great to have had that experience before coming to United Way, especially around the housing and understanding deeply this Built for Good report, because like we lived that with my colleagues at Loft Community Services. So Loft did all the different approaches in terms of housing. They purchased, they also renovated existing resources, worked with municipalities, and they're in the process of building. They're about to complete a very significant build in 2026. So, they worked with philanthropists around all those levels to help sustain what they had. The other interesting thing you mentioned, Emmy, was acquisitions. And Loft, there are nonprofits out there, and I mentioned this at OMFA as well, where, it's expensive when all sorts of capital needs are required in a housing, and a lot of nonprofits are struggling. I use the example of when I was at Loft, there is a beautiful 112 unit building, very centrally located in Toronto, that a faith community had created it, had built it, and the volunteers were running it. But then over time, those volunteers aged. They were not able to maintain the operations of the building. It's a lot of work, 112 units. So they ended up saying, we still want to do good in the community. We want to serve people that need that deeply affordable housing. We're not able to do that. So they, in fact, asked and moved that property to Loft's ownership. And now there's still beautiful connection with that faith community, and Loft operates it. Then it's also become probably Loft's most valuable property that they're able to leverage and use. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to keep our eyes on of nonprofits who are struggling, again, to that preservation. I thought Loft did that very, very well. So you got to keep, available and engaged with all sorts of community providers that may not realize, hey, they own that building or three, and they're struggling. How do larger organizations show up to support those boards and teams to not lose that housing, because it's a risk that they could sell? I think that's an area that Loft did very, very well. So preserve, purchase, and build. They did it all. I'm glad to have had the experience for all of it. But they had very big ambitions, because like at Loft, they said, who we want to serve are people that don't necessarily do super well in inclusionary zoning design. So where, you may have some people that are market rent and there's 10 scattered units that are deeply affordable. For folks that have been, which, Loft would serve the homeless or people long-term in hospital, they need teams to support them to maintain housing for their personal care. And we wanted to create a welcoming space of belonging for folks who often feel very isolated. And so they really also doubled down on the model and type of housing they would build, which was that really, in that case, I don't know if they may change course, but we were initially thinking inclusionary zoning is not necessarily going to fit the needs of our clients. So you also need to figure out what will work for the clients the organizations want to serve. And I think Loft did that very well as well.
I love that. And I also love the point that you made, I think, about, as for the sector, thinking about moving away from organizational preservation to the sector goal of creating more housing. So that might look very different in different organizations, but how can all of us as staff, leaders, and people who work in the community, how can we move away from being concerned about organizational preservation towards that greater goal of housing? So it may mean, that if you're a small, struggling organizations, there's ways to move away from that to actually create or preserve more affordable housing that is so desperately needed right now.
I think, Emmy, the other part of that is, you're right. So scarcity and preservation. So 70% of nonprofit organizations that have space are at risk of losing that space right now because it's rented or, the site, they can't afford the capital needs of the building. 70%. They're at risk of being like potentially priced out and losing, or and not being able to afford to be in the communities they in fact built. So, and it's so needed that they're there. This is shocking and very concerning for United Way. So we really want to ensure that that ability to be in that space. But I think the other thing that made me I was thinking about is, organizational preservation of a time of scarcity, because there's so much increased need, and there's so many community agencies. You just really want, it's tough, right? And how do you bring to bear? And the best example of seeing that is an organization that really knows their lane, what they're very, very good at. So someone may say, you know what, I run a drop-in center that's really incredible. I want a drop-in center on this main floor of this building. I'm making it up, a building we own. I need a drop-in that's really designed well for our people and our staff. But I don't do housing. I don't run housing. But we can leverage what I have to build it. And maybe there's a provider who's really well positioned to do the housing. And the best kind of partnerships I've seen are those that are really aligned around a common impact they want to have, or people they serve, but they really know who like the lanes that they deliver super well, and others that would. So I remember talking to a provider who said, we're going to work in partnership. Well, that's great, because our organization was accredited as a housing provider. We know how to do, health and safety and fire inspections, and all those things. There's a lot around housing. So know your lane, and then approach that as a true partnership around what you bring. And sometimes I find with preservation, it leads people to kind of try to do everything. And I think it's helpful to say, hey, you know what, actually do this super well, and this is something you do well. It helps line up all the lanes. I find that those are the leaders that really do the best around collaboration.
Yeah, you get to do a better job too, I think, when you're focused and strategic. And back to United Way, Greater Toronto, you work with such a large network of agencies, including organizations like Blue Door. How does United Way strengthen collaboration across the sector, and why is that partnership model so important? You've said a lot about it, but I'm sure you have a bit more.
It's such an essential thing. Well, because it's so important that the needs are animated from the neighborhoods and communities at United Way. They are the solutions, and the needs come from the community. That's super important to us. So there's a lot of ways we do that. So we engage certainly with all the organizations we support, and we hear from them. We visit them. I visit them. I was just at the Newcomer Center in Peel this week to see and understand from the people there, including Sandra, who was there. She's been in Canada for 6 months, and talking to her and her sister. You just got to always be curious and learning from people as you're meeting them. We go, so the teams go out and listen. We have sessions that we learn and come together. We just had a session around food insecurity this week that our staff are learning from agency partners around these issues, and trying to understand, how do we best help? Is it more food, or is it actually helping the infrastructure needed to deliver to people? Or is it the staffing needed to help deliver the food? I visited Parkdale Food Bank last week or 2 weeks ago. It's all blurred. But I recently, and for them, it was helping them design and create a space for the needs of the folks to be able to provide a more effective, efficient, and dignified experience at the food bank. So we need to hear about that from all these providers to understand how we can best invest to support. And the other is that we have big forums that we bring all the organizations together. They're engaged in our strategic plan. They're engaged right now in looking at our community investments moving forward. We're engaging. So we really, really listen. But I will say, it's not just about listening to community agencies, but there's United Way also does research. We work with municipalities, we work with hospital partners and research teams, and other educational institutions, to make sure that there's data points to question what we're doing. So we have already identified, okay, here are the neighborhoods we can see by looking at health indices, income indices, where there is the most need. Then you layer on how the population is going to grow over the next 10 years. Then are there anything new emerging there and we've identified these are the neighborhoods that need supports that don't have them. And so we are, relentlessly focused on those neighborhoods. So it's feedback and advice matched with good research and data to make sure our approach and what we're doing is smart, targeted, and going to have the biggest impact.
And with your background ranging from frontline service to executive leadership, how has your early career in community work informed the decisions you're making today?
Early work, I've always been really curious to understand the realities of the people that we were serving. And that I feel very much that we are in service of people in communities and neighborhoods. So that's helpful when you start frontline. You deeply understand that. I remember when I used to work at a health clinic, and most of the people were homeless, and they needed a kind of high support health clinic to get services, and including addiction medicine. And I remember talking to a gentleman. He came in, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you look great. You got your hair cut, right?" And he said, "This is the first time I've gotten my hair cut since I can't even remember the last time." And I remember just thinking, really understanding what that meant when he said that, and that he was using his money to get his hair cut. This was just a very huge moment for him. So I think I thought about it grounds it in communities, neighborhoods, and the difference trying to make, and not losing sight of each individual person and their own experience, and celebrating those things that could easily be missed as a massive improvement. So I think when I say I was trained well to celebrate things that maybe wouldn't on the surface be many people notice that it's something that's a big change or difference. As frontline, you get very attuned to what those things are. So that's been a gift throughout my career. And also when I'm feeling like, oh, this is hard, all I need to do is go visit a site or talk to someone impacted by United Way's funding or investment. And then I'm just filled up again and ready to go. And the frontline experience lends itself that I feel very comfortable doing that, having that conversation. And so that I'm very grateful for, because without that inspiration, sometimes it can be hard, and you try to think of it, just remind yourself is having an impact one person at a time. And of course, we do things and succeed in relation to other people. So you need to be able to relate to people and relate to our partners and our donors and our labor partners. You need to be able to relate to folks. And wow, did I ever, you learn that frontline the best. People that you just you need to know how to create trust and relationships quickly. So that has served me very, very well as well throughout my career. But, I'm a trained social worker. That's what, and it's served me really well in terms of when I think about the pandemic and living through the pandemic. I mean, people who had worked in the front line or social workers, they really, we had the edge. We knew how to see the whole staff, the impact on the whole person and on our communities we're helping, our clients, but are also our staff. That really was a time where having that frontline experience, and for me, my education around social work just was a game changer for me and our organization to be able to lean on those skills and experience during that time, because that was just about humans, serving humans and trying to get by. And that's where my frontline experience shows up.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, when you think about it, that was definitely a time when there was no handbook that could have told any of us what to do or how to act in that time, right? It was very much figuring out in that moment what needed to be done.
You know what's really neat is our team did something really great, that we just determined what are going to be our principles that we tackle all the big hard stuff with. And we're always going to agree on the principles. So, we see the whole person and their whole experience of the pandemic. So that led us to write letters to every, I wrote a letter to every staff who tested positive for COVID and said, hey, I heard you're not well. I wish you a speedy recovery. If you need anything, reach out. We're here for you. So they understood that our organization would see them through. And there was, we did get reached out, not much, but there were folks that were isolated and didn't have someone to help get them groceries and those sorts of things. The whole person, be unafraid to move first and fast was one. So we weren't waiting for direction from other people. We'd say, no, this feels right. Let's go for it. And it was almost always things were lagging, right? The practices and the best practices were often too late and then you felt the impact. So we had a few things that we just believed in, and then, above all, do right. And so that was doing right by our staff and by our clients was always a guiding principle. It was really helpful. So we had a few guiding principles and then it kind of empowered us but it was a time of incredible innovation, Emmy, which you're talking about a bit. Like, we were like, what could you do? Wow, there's this office tower. We could do this and that. It was like, let's try it. Like, there was just time there. When you talked earlier about preservation or organizational preservation, this was a totally different type of, like, whatever it takes. What can you do? Do you have this? Do you have that PPE? Let's get it to each other. And it was just link arms, to use a term my colleague used to always say, like linking arms together to deal with it. It was super exhausting. I don't know if I've actually fully recovered from it yet. I know it's 2025, but I think it'll be a while to really sink in what we all went through. But it was also one of the most professionally rewarding times in my life. Yeah. So that urgency creates necessity, which just created, let's open our arms. That whole organizational preservation thing was like, let's all show up for each other. And here's my policy. Here's this. And the fact, one of that, we just shared and lifted each other. It was a really inspiring time for that.
I love the unafraid to be first and fast. I noted that one down. You've also been recognized with several awards for community impact and leadership. Looking back, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Well, I didn't get an award for Mother of the Year, but I honestly, if I were to say what I'm most proud of, I know you're asking professionally, but I have two amazing sons. And I would say that still has been the central beacon light of my life and my wonderful family and friends. I am very proud of that. I haven't gotten an award for it, but maybe I will someday.
You just got one, on the way home mom award. How old are they?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I want that one. You can give that to me. But honestly, that's what's I'm most proud of. But it's so nice to receive awards. That's super lovely. I think what is better than the awards for me was who nominated me. And in that case, with Changemaker Award, that were some of my hospital colleagues. So that's really special because we really tried to work in breaking down, like working in our lanes, but for the right purpose, for serving people, and really purposely understanding the pressures that our hospital partners were experiencing. Blue Doors knows this well, right? You're in Southlake, are you not? Yeah. You're doing work with the hospital. So understanding the pressures in the hospitals and being responsive to that in a collaborative way. We really made a point of doing that. So what meant so much to me is they were the nominators for that award. That felt like I had accomplished something I had set out to do, which was to create really deep, meaningful relationships with my hospital colleagues, which continue to this day. But that I would say that's probably more important to me than any sort of than the award is the relationships that we spend a lot of time, effort, and care to develop and nurture that led to them.
How old are your boys?
Oh my gosh, I have a 20-year-old. I'm sorry, he just turned 20. 20 and 22-year-old. Yes, they're men. They're men. They're not boys anymore, but they'll always be like
Your
my
boys.
boys. And I will say another, I was really lucky to be awarded the Terry Fox Humanitarian Award when I graduated from high school. And that award continues to create a network of inspiring people that I continue to be connected to, that are in positions of incredible positions around our regions and the country and the world. And so that I'm very grateful for the network of supporters and inspirers through that I've remained connected to since I was 18.
Amazing, and congrats. And also on being an amazing mom. It takes a lot to juggle both. So of course that feels like the greatest reward.
Well, I would say hard. When I started my career as a leader, there were no smartphones, right? There was no Zoom. There was no Teams. I had no laptop at home. You could just go home and work on docs or documents, And I actually am grateful for that in a lot of ways, because you come home and there wasn't that distraction or calling or expectation or even ability to do that. When you left the office, you left it. And so I lived that. And it's very different reality for parents and caregivers now. And I think it would be a lot tougher in a lot of ways. I know hybrid work opens a lot of neat opportunities, but wow, the ability to leave work at work, really, and I get a call on my landline if there was a crisis, it just meant there was a lot less distraction. So I think it would be tough for caregivers and parents of little kids now. I've got a lot of empathy for that.
Yeah, I think the pandemic completely changed that. I don't know how it will ever go back, but it just came right in the house and stayed there 24/7. United Way Greater Toronto frequently convenes municipal, regional government partners. How do you see the role of United Way in bringing governments, agencies, and communities together to drive meaningful change?
Well, I think we love working with our municipalities. We want to and do help them convene and do really deepen civic engagement, as well as bring together community providers in a meaningful way to serve that region's purpose. And really, it's important to know that like the municipalities' identified needs are the community's need. Like we want to work in partnership. We also do some work for our ministry partners. An example would be recently the asylum seekers report that we looked at and gathered. Here's what worked and what didn't around, the response to the asylum seekers that in 2024. So we help pull that report and recommendations for them, right? So we do all that engagement in service of some of their. Now they can use that as they respond to potential federal or other investment, or work with us to see how we can best support that with them moving forward. So everything's got to be lockstep with our municipal partners. We don't want to be cross purpose with them at all. Our Built for Good report helps, the municipalities figure out, okay, like, all right, United Way, what are those projects in our region, and we can map those out and help them with that. So we are true partners. I did not know the scope of the incredible, generous municipal campaigns that happen across our region. That they all pull together and fundraise for United Way. It's incredible. Like they're amazing partners giving back to our communities in addition to all the work they do every day for communities. So we're there as partners to encourage that deep civic engagement, to talk about what our priorities are, to make sure they're aligned so that 1 + 1 = 3, right? Rather than us working at cross purposes. And then we are able to move some work they need forward, and they trust us to show up for them and provide good quality data, research, and information to inform their planning as well.
And one last question before we wrap up the show. When you think about the next decade in the GTA, what gives you hope, and what do you see as the biggest opportunities for building a more equitable, inclusive, and connected region?
I often say that United Way is the radical hope that we need right now, because it can feel really heavy. But I am really energized and feeling hopeful about the people are wanting to come together. So, and make a difference and help lift all of our communities. I feel a big understanding of what is needed, which I think is uniquely Canadian, Ontarian, this region. We actually are aware and are talking about these issues in our media, in our, other platforms. So I think people are really talking. I think we are going to see increased economic income disparity. Recently in a survey, there was I think it was about half of respondents said home ownership is for the wealthy. So you can hear this kind of polarization happening. And so I think what's really important, what I'm hopeful about, is that we create that united way forward when we're seeing that, and pay attention to it, and also bring together that radical hope together. So I'm hopeful about the knowledge people seem to have, the desire for lifting communities people have, and I think the right people are around to pull us all together to help us help each other.
And when you said it that way, it's so easy to get so familiar with the brand, like the United Way brand. But when you said, when you think about what that brand actually means, it says a lot. So Heather, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your insights and your leadership with our community. Your commitment to building a stronger, more connected, and more equitable GTA truly inspires the work we all do together. We're so grateful for your time today and everything you and United Way are doing to move this region forward. Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate you as a partner. And Emmy, big fan of Blue Doors. I'm a big fan. Thank you, and keep up the amazing work that you do for our community.
If you're ever exhausted, you can pop into Construct. We'd love to show you there. United Way just became a funder of that program too.
I know that project. Wow, that program, fantastic. Didn't it just kind of get announced that it's expanding?
Yes, we're taking it national now, so we're really excited.
Taking it national. Did Blue Door ever think they were going to be saying that 2 years? Maybe you did, but just listen to yourself. Isn't that exciting?
Very exciting. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
We're taking it national. I love it. I love it.
Thank you for joining us on the show today. Oh, thank you. Right back at you.
Okay, you take care. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this important conversation. Today's episode highlighted the power of cross-sector collaboration, bold leadership, and community-driven solutions in addressing our region's most pressing challenges. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and join us again next week as we continue exploring the people and ideas moving us all on the way home.
You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.